Hi, I'm Kean O'Connor, and this is a documentary about the Krays.
In this documentary, I'll be exploring the famous notorious British gangsters with people that had really known them. I have also visited and researched into locations and media that had significance and reported on the Krays, as I'll be asking questions and looking for answers to and with Maureen Flannagan and Nancy Kray and Nemone Lethtbridge to explore the brothers, to understand the balance if there was one between their criminal life and their family life, and to see if they were allegedly what people say they were: gentlemen, kind to women, kind to children, and also to see what kind of reputation they have now among society after so many years have passed since their passing. I start my first interview with Maureen Flannagan.
You knew the Krays in your lifetime. What was your personal relationship? Where did you meet them?
I met them in 1961. Sounds a long time ago, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I was 20. I'd only just got married, 6 months married. And I met Charlie Kray in a little afternoon drinking place in Old Street, Islington. Because I'm not an East Ender.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks I am. But I come from Islington. I'm a North London girl.
Yeah.
An Arsenal girl.
Oh.
2 minutes from the ground.
Yeah, we like you. We don't like Rocco over there. He's
Then
Spurs fan.
I'm football.
Yeah.
I'm a football fanatic.
Yeah.
So I had this gorgeous long blonde hair because I was a bit of a hairdresser, a bit of a model, hovering in between the two to see which one I'd keep. And he remarked, he said, "Oh, you've got lovely, gorgeous hair." I was with my husband, and I'm thinking, who's this handsome man? Immaculately dressed, with gold cufflinks and gold tie-pin and good looking, blonde. And I said, yeah, I'm a hairdresser. Oh, he said, you don't do private work, do you? Well, when a man says that to you, it's probably a bit of flirting. I thought I was going to say, you couldn't cut my hair, could you? But I said, I do private work, but it has to be on a Thursday afternoon when I'm not at work in my salon. Why? And he said, you wouldn't go home and do my mother's hair, would you? And I thought, well, looking at this man, why can't he send his mother to a hairdresser? I said, oh, where does she live? He said, Bethnal Green. I said, where's that? He said, what are you talking about, where's that? Where do you come from then? I said, I live about 3 minutes from this club. He said, oh, you'll easily find it. Start off at Highbury and keep going. You follow the signs, Bethnal Green, Hackney. I said, oh, okay. When? He said, we'll make it next Thursday. I'll tell her you're coming. She just wants it washed and you'd put all those things in, those rollers in. In those days you took your own hairdryer, the great big hood thing. No hairdryers in those days, So I was driving a little Mini, one of 12, and off I went to Bethnal Green the next Thursday afternoon. Drove down Valence Road, all with directions. In those days you could park.
Yeah.
Parked outside number 178. There was a little row of houses, just 4 in a row. And I parked outside, knocked at the door, big knocker. And this lovely little lady came out. When you meet somebody, you think you're going to be friends with them forever.
Yeah.
Happy, little blonde lady, little tubby, like a mother, like a mummy. You knew that you liked her before you stepped inside her hall. And as I stepped inside, it was like something out of a film set, with little curtains drawn and tied up with little pink bows, and everything was immaculate. And she said, "Come in here." And I went into this sort of kitchen cum dining room, one walking into the other. And she said, "Sit down, tea," immediately. "Oh, I've got a lovely cake. I've made a lovely cake. Would you?" I thought, well, I'll be polite. I said, I'll have a slice of cake. And I'm looking along a shelf. And I went up to the shelf and there's all these little pictures and cups, trophy cups. I said, who are these boys? You've got 2 boxer boys in shorts and with their hands like this with gloves, nothing on top, black hair, the spitting image of each other. You could say it was the one boy. I said, who are these? She said, they're my twins. I didn't know anything about it. I never heard of the name Kray. I'd never been to the East End in my life. I was 20, got married, went into hairdressers, and I knew my own 7 brother-in-laws who were all a bit naughty, as we'll say. So that's all I knew, the North London lot. So I got on very well with her. She's telling me these are her twins. I said, I've met your elder son. And what are these cups? Oh, they're the cups they win at boxing.
Yeah.
Now, if I was 20, they've got to be 27, just going on 27 at this time.
Yeah.
So young, up and coming, not done any real skullduggery, maybe, never stole a car in their life, wouldn't know how to steal a car. And then I, took her out the hairdryer and I'm combing out her hair and 1.5 gallons of lacquer, squirt, squirt. And I heard the door go and I heard someone say, Mum. And she said, that's Reggie. And I thought, well, how does she know? Looking at the two, they look exactly alike. And how does she know which one it is? Surely they sound alike. And into this room came this man. I thought, oh my God, you're similar to your brother in your dress. Absolutely immaculate. Remember, this is in the afternoon. This got to be 4 o'clock by now.
Yeah.
We've had tea and cake twice, and I've done her hair, washed it, dried it. I looked at him, and the look on his face, like completely taken back, that there should be a stranger in his mother's house. That's how protective they was. Immediately, quite abruptly, he said, "Oh, who are you?" And I went to say my name, but she said, "Oh, this is Maureen. She's doing my hair. Look, do you like it?" He said, "Yeah, it's very nice, Mum. But how did you get here?" I said, "In the little white Mini that's outside. Did you see it?" And he said, "Yeah, it's outside." I said, I thought he's come home in a car. Someone's driven him home, obviously. And then she poured him out a cup of tea, and then the 20. I thought I was in a quiz. What's your name? Maureen Flannagan. You might know my brother-in-laws. I said, there's 7 of them, and they're very, very well known in North London. He said, 2 of them, the eldest 2. They're identical twins, he said, like us. I said, yeah, that's right. He said, yeah, we've met them down at the Regency. They don't come often, once in a blue moon. I thought, God, thank God for that. What do you do for a living? I'm a hairdresser. How old are you? I'm 20. You say you're married? A bit young to be married. Like, really, interrogation, not just nice questions. I thought, oh my God, where do you live? Now, what does your husband do? Well, typical Irishman, he's an asphalter. Oh, on the roads. See, complete disinterest. Had I said he's got a pub, which a lot of Irishmen had, oh, where's the pub? What's its name? They'd have gone there and see what they could take from there.
Yeah.
But what can you take from someone asphalt in the road? You can't. Or asphalt in the roof, which he used to do. Disinterest. Where did you go to school? I went to a convent in Holloway Road. Oh, with the posh people. Oh, you're one of... really, you could feel very uncomfortable. Possibly had I just come out of my school, where we were taught manners and taught to be quiet. But because I was a hairdresser and I was talking to 40 women a day and asking them questions and they're asking me, I think you get to know that you can answer anybody's questions. But I felt interrogated.
Yeah.
I said, well, I'm going now, Violet, because she had told me, don't call me Mrs. Kray, call me Violet. I'm going now, Violet, and she said, how much is that? I remember I said 7 and 6.
Yeah.
7 shillings and 6 pence that was. And she said, okay, do you want another cup of tea before you go? And he stood up, stumped the cigarette out, which he'd had about 3 while he sat there, stumped the cigarette out and said, I'm going to go up and have a little lie down and then I'm going to have a wash and change. She said, where's Ronnie? Oh no, he's not coming home for anything to eat, Mum. I'm meeting him out. And then as I came out of the hall, all along the hall, you're coving along was these shirts on hangers. At least 12, 14 shirts, all white, all pristine, all ironed, starched. And I thought, see this woman, she must take washing in. Because people did in those days for a bit of extra money, I said, what's all these shirts, Violet? you know, these shirts hanging up. She said, oh, they're all for the boys. I do those every day.
Yeah.
I thought, every day? 12 shirts washing and ironing, because they come in and out and in and out, and they won't go out in the same shirt as they went out in the morning. She said, the only thing I don't do is breakfast. They go up the road for that. So, you see, that's where they walk up Valence Road, turn right, about 8 shops down, they go into Police's. Now, that's been there 180 years, 200 years. So it might be worth your while to stop by there.
Yeah.
Because they had breakfast there every morning.
Everyone, yeah. Wow.
And that was my first meeting with Reggie.
Yeah.
I thought,
And
my God. And it wasn't until the next Thursday,
Yeah.
I'm doing the same thing, wash, dry, put all the rollers in, put her under the dryer, and bang the door. Mum, that's Ronnie. Completely different entirely. Dressed the same, beautiful suit, shirt, tie, hair, everything beautiful, watch, you know, everything the same except very morose. And what's your name? And slower speaking. I said, well, my name's Maureen. I met your brother, Reg, last week. He went, oh, like, as though it didn't mean much to him. I said, and of course I met Charlie, your older brother. I said he was the one that sent me here. I came last week for the first time. He said, oh, you're here to do Mum's hair? I said, yeah. He sat down, lit up the cigarette, smoking. He must have smoked 20 while I was there. That just one box, and asked for another box.
Yeah.
You know, but not the interrogation, just, you know, where'd you come from maybe and what you do. And then as I got to know him, I liked him better. When I tell people that, they can't believe it, because he was a madman. He was, you know, a paranoid schizophrenic and very, very ill all his life.
Yeah.
But I came to like him. He was more generous than Reggie. He'd take anything off and give it to you. You know, he'd give away anything that he had. So the difference between their personalities was that you'd rather annoy Reggie, because you'd probably get the obligatory left-hander. Or you might get knocked out, you might have 3 of them, but you would rather, because the other one wouldn't stop. The other one was definitely mad.
I'm Charlie Kray's daughter, Nancy Kray. Yep, twins.
Yeah.
One was Kray's niece.
So, could you remember back to any like first memories of the family?
I do remember from when I was quite little.
Yeah.
Fun stuff and, you know.
Yeah. So you say fun stuff like what?
Well, for instance, I was mad on football when I was a little girl.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely football crazy. And when all 3 of them were together at Nanny's house, they'd go and play football with me.
Yeah.
And I'd be bouncing around going, oh, play football, play football.
Yeah.
And there was one funny part in the garden when Ron was in the goal, and I was really wanting to get a goal. And I booted it as hard as I could, and it went straight in Ronnie's face. And his glasses fell off, and we were like, are you going to take this? And he picked up his glasses, put them back on, and went, ouch, that hurt. We thought it could go one way or the other, you know.
Yeah.
We just went, ouch, that hurt.
Yeah.
You know, so I remember things like that.
And that's a pretty nice story, because you know, he's known for being this kind of, well, not among obviously the closest of family, but he's known among society really in the East End for being a very intimidating person. But to do that's pretty sweet.
Yes,
isn't it? Yeah.
yes, that's like a very fond memory for me.
Yeah. So my granny was telling me about some stories that you know about that they did take care of their community.
Yes.
And they were very charitable, and they
Yes.
took care of people that needed taken care of, like the pensioners at Christmas time.
Yes.
Could you possibly tell us some stories about that?
Yes. One Christmas, what it was there was people that couldn't even afford turkey for the Christmas dinner. So or chicken, nothing. And so for all those people that couldn't even have chicken, they bought turkeys for So they all had a lovely, Christmas dinner each. It was wonderful. And a hamper for the church and sort of things like that, They did care for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was good.
Yeah. It sounds like it, and the stories aren't really discussed as much when we hear about, them being convicted of murder and, some things about Reggie and Francis, the abusive relationships that we hear about, we don't know, but, but hearing those kind of stories as well, it kind of brings more of a balance to the view of them, because we know that they did do bad, but then they also did do very good as well.
Very good things as well.
Very good things, and they did take care of their own.
Yes. For example, there was a man that lived on the streets, and Ron would only smoke half his cigarette and put when the ashtray had enough in it, he put it outside the front door for the man, so he had some dignity. He didn't have to scrounge for cigarettes. He put the ashtray outside the door for him to just come and get them. And, I thought that was quite sweet, So, yeah. They were like that sometimes,
Yeah. And it just does go to show that they weren't just stone cold criminals, they did have a heart,
Yes.
And,
they did, How I understood it was they did bad things for good reasons. As far as with the gambling halls, they did that was wrong, but it was for a good reason. They would help people gamble safely, so that they could go home with money in their pockets to their families, their homes and that, and then come back the next day to be able to gamble some more. And it would keep them going, because gambling's an addiction that is so hard to quit. It's like an illness, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And that's how they used to help people, by gambling sensibly. Which I thought was, a bad thing, good reason though, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, things like that.
Yeah. Do you have any more stories of the charitable side, like them taking care of the community? Like anything comes to mind quickly?
Yes. The reason why I've got a tattoo of a dolphin was because they financed a dolphin sanctuary.
Oh, did they?
For disabled children to swim with the dolphins.
Oh wow.
So yes, that was part of one of the things that was close to my heart too.
Yeah.
So I was really like that.
Yeah.
So they did do a lot of things, With Maureen, she's keeping up the family tradition of doing, charity work that she's got an MBE for now.
Yeah.
And that's just typical of what the family was really like behind all, the rest of it.
Yeah.
So.
Because their mother was known to be very, very caring and straightforward, and she was said to never have sworn before. So that there is that, if you look at them and you look at the family tree, there is there's a very nice side.
Yes.
To them, and there's a very straightforward side as well.
Yes.
And even if you look at the classiness and the way that they dress and everything, if that was, and you hear the stories about them being gentlemen as well, specifically towards women. It does allude to it more of it spreads it out between the crime and the personal life, really.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah.
I don't believe that Reg would have hit Francis at all. I really don't know.
So you don't agree with
when they're
Legend?
in the film?
Yeah.
That's the only part I really don't agree with, because there's no way, that he would have hurt a woman that was fragile.
Yeah.
Not chance. He'd never do it.
Yeah. It's hard to think as well, it being Francis, who was his wife, and
he loved her so much.
Yeah.
There's not a chance would he have done that. Yeah, no, they wouldn't hit women.
Yeah.
They just said it's just not right. They're fragile.
Yeah.
So violence towards women or children or anything, it was just, you don't do it.
Yeah.
I'm Nemone Lethtbridge, and I was for some years counsel for the Kray twins and Charlie, and their friend Ferric Mitchell, who was known as the Mad Axe Man.
In this part of the documentary, we just want to explore your connection with the Krays, and why didn't you get it might be a bit obvious, but why weren't you that close, and why weren't you in the films? And you know, when you are someone that's an expert really on them, they don't really talk about the significance you had towards them. So, if you'd just like to explain.
Well, although I was very young, I had a bit of common sense, and my common sense told me not to get too close. I mean, I've noticed, and everything I've learnt since reinforces what I learnt then, was that it's very dangerous to get close or too close to anybody who makes their living by crime. And this is because criminals like to instruct to represent them somebody they call one of our own. And that means it's got to be somebody who speaks the same language.
It's like when you watch films about, you know, gangsters.
Yes.
And stuff like that. They have one very dodgy lawyer that knows what's going on, but they, you know, try and cover up for them. Were you ever like that with them, or were you?
No, I kept my distance.
Yeah.
I confined my dealings with them to what was strictly necessary and not too close. I think of another example, which was terribly sad. There was a barrister's clerk who started, as far as the job was concerned, from quite a humble start. And he studied and worked hard, and in the end became a barrister. And the Krays became very close to him. Now, every Saturday they used to meet their friends and contacts in a pub somewhere in Bethnal Green. And it was all very harmless and innocent, just having a few drinks and a chat. But one Saturday, this chap joined them, and they said, "Oh, this is our friend Albert, who just happened to be there at the same time. Would you do us a favour? Would you do him a favour? Would you sign his passport application?" And they did this. And it said, "I've known Albert, whatever his name, Smith, for 30 years. In fact, they'd just met him that morning." And this, in the end, was found out. And the chap was disbarred, lost his job, and was professionally ruined. That's always the danger. I got a horrible feeling of snobbery about the way in which the prosecution was conducted. And I think it was the Evering Road murder, the one where Jack the Hat was killed.
Yeah.
Jack the Hat was stabbed, and he fell to the floor at the party where he died. And he didn't die immediately. He was injured. And Peter Crowder, who was one of the defence barristers, who was a very grand fellow, married to the daughter of an earl, asked of the injured man who's lying on the floor, he said, "Was he ambulant?" And the witness didn't know what he meant, and nor did a lot of people. What he meant was, could he walk? Now, why couldn't he have said so?
Yeah.
But I think he wanted to embarrass the witness by demonstrating that he didn't understand the question.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was unnecessary, and it was plain snobbish.
Yeah.
Then there was...
That goes to show, doesn't it? That goes to show, doesn't it, that the
Yes.
class system,
Yes,
and especially that they came from the working class, it
yes.
not really liked. Especially it would be a lot more in that era as well, the 1960s, between the two classes, right? I mean,
Yes.
Between the whole three classes.
It's better now.
And it's a bit more of a blunt question, this, and it's straight up, but do you think it's right that they're having Hollywood films made about them and all of this good stuff when they could swing either way? Do you think that they were just stone cold, not very nice people, or do you think they actually were good people, but they, not good people because obviously they were in crime, but there was a lot more of a nicer side that people don't explore and don't realise and haven't heard about yet or seen in these films?
Oh, there was good in them.
Yeah.
There was kindness in them. They were very family orientated, and they were very kind to the poor.
Yeah.
But there's one story I must tell you which is quite funny.
Yeah.
You know that Ronnie became very friendly with Lord Boothby.
Yeah.
And he and Lord Boothby actually shared a boyfriend.
Oh,
But they decided to go into business together.
Yeah.
And they decided to build a garden city in Nigeria, which in fact never happened.
Yeah.
But anyway, Lord Boothby asked Ronnie to lunch in the House of Lords one day, and Ronnie accepted. And at the beginning of lunch, Boothby asked him what he'd like to drink. And Ronnie said, "Oh, I'd like to try one of them lovely prawn cocktails."
Well, he's not so middle class after all, is he? He's
Not so sophisticated.
Oh, no, that's funny, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, one of them nice prawn cocktails. Oh.
But he was extraordinarily kind and generous and polite,
Yeah.
as far as I was concerned. I mean, on the way back from court one day, he said to me, he offered me a lift back from, it was the South London Magistrates Court, and he said, "Can I offer you a lift back? Nobody don't like to be south of the river, do they?" So I said, "I'd love a lift back." And on the way back, he said, "Mother would be honoured if you'd take tea with her."
Oh, really?
And I said, "Well, that's lovely." Yeah. So I went to tea with Mrs. Kray, and at her house, which was in Valence Road, Bethnal Green. It was known as Fort Valence.
What I want to know also in this next question was, what was your relationship with Reggie, seeing that we know what it was like with Ronnie?
I wasn't close to Reggie at all. And he was always very polite.
Yeah.
But he never attempted to make friends.
Yeah.
Ronnie was quite odd in that way, because he was openly homosexual.
Yeah.
He never made any secret of it.
Yeah.
Although he confessed it.
Yeah.
It was, but of course he wasn't frightened. In those days it was against the law.
Yeah.
And if anybody had ever complained, he would have gone to prison.
Do you think there's any chance of that, hearing these stories about Ronnie, and obviously we know the bad he done, but then also he sounds like this, on the other side of him, he sounds like this sweet kind of guy. Do you think Reggie could have possibly been a bad influence on Ronnie, which led to the other side to him?
I never thought of that. As far as their criminal career was concerned, I both think they felt the same way.
Yeah. But it's just when you think about, obviously, Ronnie being a paranoid schizophrenic, and the story with Reggie breaking Ronnie out of, it was a mental hospital, wasn't it, that Ronnie
Yes.
was in? And when you hear stuff like that and taking him out of there when he wasn't well at the time and not letting him recover, it does make you think that there might be, obviously they were both criminals and whatnot, and there are good stories to both of them as well, aside from the criminal stuff they'd done. They were gentlemen, as you say, they were very polite, but then I think that could have, he caused Ronnie to be worse in that sense for doing that.
They adored each other, and they didn't like one to be away and the other.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So that's probably the reason why he done it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. They swapped clothes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And came out.
So, can you tell me about how the feud of Cornell began?
Yes, completely different to what a lot of people think. A lot of people think he called Ronnie Kray a fat puff. Yes, well, of course he did, but that was later. That first started off in a pub in Hackney Road, where Ronnie had a meeting. He's sitting talking to the landlord, what's his name? Checker Berry, the landlord, and he was waiting for somebody, obviously drinking, and the person was very, very late and hadn't turned up. Just by fluke, in walked George Cornell and said something sarcastic, not the fat puff line, just, oh, look, you're here spoiling my afternoon, something like that, and Ronnie flew at him, but was quite drunk at the time, and they proceeded to have the most terrible, terrible fight. And Checker Berry told me this himself, plus Ronnie Kray later, but he came running out from behind the bar and said, please, I've just took the pub, just decorated the pub, please, can you take it outside? Normally, somebody like Ronnie Kray wouldn't listen to God, but he managed to push them, bashing each other, out onto the pavement, and Cornell was definitely winning. He really gave Ronnie Kray the most terrible, terrible hiding, and we now know. People don't want to believe that. It spoils the myth. Yeah. But I assure you that it's true. And they were really smashing each other on the pavement. And a cab, just a fluke again, along Hackney Road, a cab slowed down to see the fire and recognised it was Ronnie Kray.
Yeah.
Thought he'd do himself a bit of good here. And he just stopped and he went, Ronnie, quick, get in here. And Ronnie Kray just stumbled, bleeding, stumbled into the cab and he said, take me to Valence Road, not to my mother's house, 2 doors along, to the auntie, where the clean clothes were.
Yeah.
Now, and Cornell went on his merry way, but I assure you that it is the total and utter truth that Cornell won. So that started the feud that Ronnie Kray always had in his head, I'm going to finish you one day.
Yeah.
And I don't ever think he thought it was going to be in a fight.
Yeah.
Because he'd already been punished
You wanted to take his
really
life.
badly by, had a big lump on the side of his head. It was really a beating.
Yeah.
And the second time was in a club where one was coming down the stairs, which they recreated in the film a bit. One was coming down the stairs, one was going out, and he went, oh look, here comes the fat puff. Ronnie Kray went to fly at him, being sober this time, and Cornell was sober. They went, and Reggie stopped that and said, not here, Ron, there'll be another time. Don't let him go, dear, not in this club. And they separated them. So that was the second time. The third time, there's another thing that spoils the myth. Cornell didn't just go and sit in the Blind Beggars to find Ronnie Kray. You'd have never found Ronnie or Reggie Kray in the Blind Beggars. They hated the pub, absolutely hated it. Ronnie Kray called it the Pits, dirty. It was a dirty old pub.
Yeah.
Georgie Cornell had been over the London hospital with a mate of his, Albie Woods, to visit somebody, and just thought, I visited, I'll go and have a pint. He sat there, someone phoned Ronnie, who was up the road in the Widow's pub. He stopped off, got a gun, and thought, this is it. This is the third time we've met. This is the day you're going to die, or the evening you're going to die. And he did. That's the truth about that story.
In the films, they use that bit as like a turning point for like kind of the downfall.
It was their downfall because, let's take an example, the mafia.
Yeah.
If the mafia want you dead, they'll hire a hitman.
Yeah.
They pay him, he's as silent as a mouse. He kills the person, takes his money and goes.
Yeah.
Nobody knows that the boss has ordered it. He should never have done it himself, and if he did, he should never have done it in front of witnesses. Because although those witnesses said, no, we didn't see you did it, or no, there wasn't 2 men, no, well, what's those bullet holes in the ceiling for then? Where Barry... no, I don't know, it must have been there. No, the barmaid took over a year to be convinced to talk.
Yeah.
So he should never have done it in front of witnesses. And Reggie, and the McVitie murder, that wasn't supposed to be at all. He was supposed to be getting a good hiding for taking a gun into the Regency, saying he's going to kill him, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It didn't. Yeah. It all just turned wrong, and I get that straight from Chris and Tony Lambriano, who were standing there and went away for 15 years and didn't do a thing, except drive a body, which they were told to do, get rid of that, as though it's a dead cat in the road, get rid of that.
Yeah.
Clean up this place, mop up the blood.
Yeah. Well,
that's their downfall.
Yeah.
That's their downfall. To think they could murder people in cold blood in front of witnesses and get away with it. They thought they were invincible.
Yeah.
And Reggie always said that they were.
Yeah.
And so did the Colonel, Ronnie.
Yeah,
he thought he could do everything, but unfortunately he couldn't.
Yeah, but it gets like as well into. I just want to ask about the feuds that they both had with each other. That Ronnie and Reggie, when they both would really go at each other.
Oh, I've been there several times in the house,
Really?
where he'll say something, say no, I'm not going. Yeah, you are going.
Yeah.
Is be the dominant one at certain times, most times. Yeah, you are going, and I don't want you to do it like that. I want. Reggie said I'll do it my way, and then he go to lunge at him and realise he's in his mother's house outside. And Mrs. Kray and me, I used to say to her the first time I saw it, can't you stop them? It'll all be over in 10 minutes. I thought over in 10 minutes that one of them would be dead, because I'm not saying a few punches, they'd bash each other, absolute bash each other, on the pavement and hurt each other. But nobody could interfere.
Yeah.
There stood the firm, couple was sitting in cars, and I think, why don't those men get out and just say, come on, you two, you're brothers. But you wouldn't, because they would turn. Just completely turn, and you'd be the victim.
Yeah.
But in 10 minutes, she was right. They'd breathe again, go in, go upstairs and have a wash, change their clothes and go out.
Another thing I'd like to ask about and explore is, so we kind of talked about this when Nancy and Maureen were here as well, but after going to Bethnal Green and seeing all those sites the other day, and then speaking to locals about the Krays, they have been, there's like a balanced opinion, because it's the sites around there became quite a tourist attraction because of the Krays, and you see, because of the media and the films and stuff, has them kind of in a way like they're seen as heroes, and then you get speaking to locals and they also use that for advertisement reasons for their companies and their bars and stuff. But then what they say, the locals say about them, they say that they were thugs and criminals, and they shouldn't be bringing them back. So I just want to know what your opinions are on that.
Well, I think there's always been a need in the English character for scallywag heroes. It's the Robin Hood thing.
Yeah, the Robin Hood. Yeah.
The
bloody Robin Hood.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Krays are still liked in the East End because they didn't prey on locals or the poor. They preyed on their own type. Robin Hood stole from the rich and gave to the poor. And the Krays, in many ways, were the same as that. They came from the working class. They stole from the rich. From people like club owners and bookmakers, and people who had money. And they gave to pensioners and for old people.
Yeah, like through some of the stories Nancy Kray told us about with
yes,
with
I
the
think
turkeys and
Nancy told you how they gave turkeys at Christmas to people who didn't have any. And, when I went to Ronnie's funeral, and when Ronnie was buried, the streets were packed. And there were something like 24 limousines, which is extraordinary when you think about it. And the church was packed. We couldn't get into the church. They broadcast it outside, the service outside. The only people who got into the church were those who could push and shove.
Yeah.
I know my dad was definitely innocent with that cocaine. I know he was definitely innocent. So when the day my brother died, he didn't even have £5.
Really?
So suddenly it's all coming up, he's got these millions and millions of pounds.
Yeah.
He didn't even have a fiver the day my brother died.
Yeah.
So so no way. He wouldn't do that even if he had money.
Yeah.
He would have built a hospice for people,
Yeah.
to be there with their families and stuff like that, if he had that sort of money. There's no way he'd do that. when he went to prison for that cocaine, on that cocaine trial.
Yeah.
Not a chance.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
You know? So it's the way it is, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Oh, now I tell you the story of the when I went to the trial,
Yeah.
and he recognised me. He saw me walking into the public part of the court,
Oh yeah.
and he got one of the prison warders to take me a note, which he wrote, which said, "Dear Miss Lethtbridge, you are more beautiful than ever. When I get out of this, I will take you to the moon."
Wow. Yeah. Who's off his nut?
No, off his head.
Yeah, off his head. Yeah.
Off his head.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Maureen had some strange stories about.
Oh, she did.
Yes.
She did, but it was.
Yes. But
yeah. He wasn't very well, was he?
It was
But he wasn't. It wasn't malicious, and it was just in a sense of. It was showing maybe a sense of appreciation of you, probably. You know.
It was sweet.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether he thought he was going to the moon or not. He probably was.
He probably thought he was. He probably
Yes.
thought he was. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
In the final part of this documentary, I went to Chingford Cemetery to visit the graves, where the story finishes. Well, we're here at the pretty much the entire family. Start with Frances. She died age 23. Yeah. So it's my dear wife Frances Kray, who passed away 7th of June 1967, aged 23 years. If I could write the beauty of your eyes, and in fresh numbers, number all your graces, the age to come would say, this poet lies, such heavenly touches, near touch to earthly faces. Yeah. It's a tragic story, what happened to her. Yeah. And here we have the parents, Violet Kray and Charles David Kray. If you remember in the Krays film 1990, when she dies right at the end, and it's not the same place, I don't believe, but the two camps were filmed looking at the mother Violet's grave. Yeah. And over here we have Charles Kray, the brother of the twins, and the son of Violet. Passed away in 2000. And here we have, we come full circle in this documentary, we have Ronnie and Reggie Kray. We have their grave here, and covered in new flowers and well taken care of grave. Yeah. After exploring the Krays during this project, we have gathered many answers to the questions we've been looking for. But then also there's been many more doors that have been opened to find out about them. So many more questions as well that we couldn't even explore during this because there was just the time. But as Maureen Flannagan did say, they have become folklore through the media and they probably will never die.